Today, I want to talk about weather and your weather forecasting, preparing for your flights, whether they be this afternoon, the next day. And primarily to begin with, let's talk about how to set up Aviation Weather Center to best suit your needs. So when you come to aviationweather.gov, the first location you're going to end up is the main screen with current conditions. You can click on the legend to see different details such as SIGMETs, whether it's IFR, light IFR, if there's any PIREPs related to icing, turbulence. So you can see each of those examples on the screen. You can also click on the map, and this will take you to the observations page, which you can also come to from observations here. So the screen's a little bit crowded to begin with, so I'm going to show you how to start scratch and then add or delete anything that you want to add to your screens. So if you look over to the right, we can see that you have general aviation, so I'm going to choose general aviation. You have one for low altitude, helicopters, and you can do extended range if you want to look at extended range. So let's start with general aviation. So for the next 1 to 18 hours of forecast up to 48,000 feet. So on the right side of the screen, and I'll move this up so you can see it a little bit better, you have active layers. You can configure your map options. You have your flight plan that we can talk about, and then you can search for a particular station, and then you can navigate to your current location. Obviously, your zoom in or zoom out buttons. So if I zoom out, you can see a bigger picture of the US and what's happening now. So today is January the 30th, 2026, and you can see there's an ice storm that is looking to hit the East Coast as it's moving in with a northeaster order bomb cyclone. And we'll use that in some of our analysis as we go through. So I'm going to start with just selecting active layers, and I'm going to uncheck everything to show you what the screen looks like with nothing chosen. So you could come back and you can choose infrared to see what's happening with the clouds. You can choose infrared to visible. You can choose water vapor, and then go back and look to see what's happening. That's okay for you're looking at the bigger picture flying across the US. In most flights, I don't use that, so I'll leave that unchecked. Next, you have radar composite. So you can come back and look at radar lowest. It'll give you a view of what's happening at the lowest level, at the composite, and obviously you can choose 0 to 4 kilometers and echo tops. So let's leave it on radar composite to begin with. Flight category. So you can choose flight category, ceilings, visibility, and lightning. So let's start with flight category. So when I check this box, it'll come back and show us any details on a specific flight category. If I want to look at ceilings, if there's anything to show, those will come back up here. So I usually just leave it on flight category so I can see what's happening there on the screen. Next is METARs. So if I click on METARs, I'm zoomed out a bit so you see a bunch of the different METARs across the US. But if I zoom in, because I am just south of the Charlotte airport in Rock Hill, South Carolina. So now you can start seeing the METARs for Charlotte. You can see Rock Hill. You can see Chester, Lancaster, Greenville, Spartanburg. Can see Clemson University. So it gives you a quick overview of what's happening in each of these different locations. If something isn't populating on the screen, you can go back and refresh your screen to see if it's going to get any of the additional data to load from there. Right. And then one of the challenges I do run in sometimes is it doesn't show all the data. So I'll go back and zoom out or zoom in to get it to refresh the data. So we've added METARs, so that comes in and looks good. So we can also add flight category dots. So this lets you see what's happening. So obviously you can see the green dots in the area where I am in South Carolina, but as I go a little bit to the north into North Carolina and Tennessee, you can start seeing red dots of what's happening. This one in Williamsburg, Kentucky, right? And so it's a good quick view to get an idea. If you're flying south, everything looks fairly green. You do see some of the clouds coming in from there. I'm going to turn off the radar composite just to make it a little bit easier to see some of the screen on that side. And you can see the different flight categories. Here's we've got this. At all times, you can always click on the legend, and it's going to come in and tell you, for example, flight categories. This is marginal VFR and IFR in some of these different areas. So obviously, you could turn that off, remove those, or make sure that's in, right? You can add in PIREPs. So I'm going to take off the METARs so it's easier to see the right, and you can see the flight categories. So I click on PIREPs, and now you can start seeing the PIREPs. Let me get rid of the legend, showing up at different points. So this was a, at time 1842, flight level 35,000, type was an A321, and turbulence was negative. So you can quickly see in the different areas if there's anything that might concern you. But as I go further out to the west, you can see now there's a PIREP related to turbulence negative, icing light, rime. Uh, and then you can get more of the details very quickly about where you're going to float. So I'll turn off the PIREPs and flight category. I can also put in fronts. So now you can zoom out and get your surface analysis chart. You can see that we've got a high pressure to the north. Just below us in South Carolina, we've got a stationary front with a low pressure area, high pressure off the coast, a low pressure to north with a trough here, here, and here. So this lets you kind of see what's happening with the patterns. And you can also go back historical from the timeline below, and you can then look at how it's changed hour by hour. Now, all of this is in Zulu, but I'll show you how to change it to your local time in just a moment. So we've got the front showing on. If there's any sigmets, you can click. So you can see that there's a convective sigmet here. If there's any uh, warnings for weather, National Weather Service warnings. You can see the National Weather Service warnings for winter storm showing up there. And then you can also turn on air nets. And you have multiple options for air nets. You can look at all or none. So I can have IFR for any IFR air nets, mountain obscuration. And so obviously you can see the IFR, mountain obscuration as they come back in. So that lets you look at what you're worried about, any low level wind shear if there was any, surface winds, right? You can look at freezing levels, turbulence high. In a GA aircraft, you're probably not going to go high, so you can look at the turbulence low, see areas where there's surface to, you got 12,000 feet here, right? And we got another one for surface winds off the coast, sustained winds greater than 30 knots. So you can make this as busy or as light as you want it to be, looking at all of the different elements, radar composites, and lead off. So it makes for a very busy map, but it gives you an idea of where you are and where you're going on that site. All right. So I'm going to pull a little bit of that back and get it more to just a surface analysis chart. So I'm going to leave the radar and flight category on. I'm going to turn off the METARs, turn off the flight categories, PIREPs, and then I'm just going to leave the fronts, SIGMETs, national warnings, air mets, etc. on here. And so now this gives me a good view that if I wanted to leave Rock Hill and head to the south, turbulence height would be a problem, but I'm not going to go over 10,000 feet. So I should be good, but I should be aware at 18,000 feet that there's concerns. The bigger concern is going to be icing and probabilities along the Appalachian Mountains going up through this area, right? So let's turn some of those off just to clean that up. And that gives me just a short view of the surface analysis chart of where we are. So this is current observations with a history of what has been happening recently. You can also change settings on the map. So let's start with data. And for METAR, you can tell it what data you're interested in with the METARs. Temps, winds, altitude, visibility, weather, coverage, ceilings. If there's anything with dew point, right? You can look at those. You can change the density and the scale of how large you want the data to show up on the screen. The others, you can also choose to decode the METARs. So let me step back and turn on the METAR. And so let's come back in and choose Charlotte. So I can see the METAR as it is here. So I'll close that out, go back to settings, go back to METAR and choose decode METAR and include the TAF for Charlotte. So when I close that out and come back, now it has decoded the METAR for me instead of having to read it straight through, and it has included the TAF for the Charlotte area since the Charlotte airport has a TAF. I can zoom in and get other airports and see what's happening there. So if I look where I am in Rock Hill, I can now look at Bryant Field and see that the temperature is 42 degrees, 6 Celsius, 20 degrees is the dew point, the altimeter, visibility, the winds 100 at 5 knots, and that it's currently VFR, right? So it lets you come back and choose those quickly, right? If I want the data to show up larger, if I just increase the scale, then you can see that the text got really large and makes it a little bit harder to see. But you can play around that to see what works appropriately for you. So I usually keep it around medium, and then I can see enough of the data here. A great part is you're looking at this data and you're like, well, what's the difference between the 4.6 and the 2.1? If I go to the legend, it's going to come back and show me that, oh, this first number is temp. And then for the weather, the visibility is 9 statute miles as an example, the dew point 33. So looking at Rock Hill, the temperature is 46 degrees, the dew point 21 degrees. I've got it set in Fahrenheit. I'll show you that setting. You can see that I've got 10 plus in visibility. Um, I can look at the wind gusts and altimeter. So if I'm looking here at Rock Hill, I'm at 3008 for the altimeter. I've got the wind showing roughly about 5 knots. And if there's any ceilings to worry about between those, then you can zoom in and you can see the details on this. So obviously the altimeter is 3009 in Rock Hill, but only 15 miles to the south, it's 3008. So you can easily see all of those change. And the legend option gives you a quick view to come back and look at that data. Back into configuration, so I'll close out the METAR. PyReps, you can choose what type of PyReps. For weight turbulence, you can tell it to show me just light. You can show me medium or heavy. You can look at intensity as a minimum, and you can decode the PyReps as well so that it makes it easier for you to read. Also change the scale, and you can change the tops up to 48,000, or if I'm only going to fly no more in my plane than, let's say, 12,000, you can bring it down. There's 9, there's 15. I can worry about the bases. If I want to look at bases and the max age, you can choose the time frames. So it gives you a lot of options to configure this page the way you want to look at it. For segments, you can come in and just put in what you want to decode. You can tell it to display heights and outlooks if you want. For scalability, then you can also look at opacity. So how much of the screen do you want it to cover? Do you want it to totally cover everything so it's easy to see? Or do you want to be able to see some of the data behind it? So move it to the left for opacity. Same with air mets, you can display opacity and heights. And for your weather announcements, you can list those there. The next, we're going to move out of data into imagery. Look at weather images. You can change the opacity so you can see the clouds in the background. So I can come back and change some of those for weather image. For satellites, I can change those as well. Radar, come back and show those. And I can even show loop controls on the radar if I wanted to be able to see the radar here down below. I don't use it, so I'll leave that off. Map format, you can have it display coordinates. I usually switch this to local time so that everything shows up in local. You can have it to show GFA for in air map boundaries. If you wanted to see those, I'll leave those off. And then your base map, as you can see right now, is just plain white, but you can come back and change it to a VFR chart. And so now that's going to make it a little bit easier for you to see the VFR chart, and you can change the opacity of how much you want to see of the VFR chart. So if you really want to see the VFR chart well, and close it out, and now I can come in and see the VFR charts and sectionals, terminal area charts really well on the screen. Right? So if I wanted a little bit less, I can bring that back to give me an idea of what's back behind all the features I have on. Uh, Other features you can come back in is you could list airports. If I click on airports, show IDs. So now you're going to start seeing airports and IDs like 16SC or 3SC or NC02. Right? Some of these are already showing up because you have like Charlotte or Cusa for Rock Hill, but it lets you see different airports there as you're going through. Uh, you can turn that off. You can show runways if you wanted. If you want to see nav aids, you can turn those on and they'll show up like there's a, um, go back and look, and now we have our Greenwood TechHand showing up here. And as you turn these capabilities on, then you can always go back and look at the what's happening on your legend. And if you want to look at all the details, you can click down to click on all symbols, all weather symbols. I'm going to open this in a new tab. And when you go to the new tab, it gives you a great little view of all the different functions of symbols that are going to be showing up on the map. So it becomes super easy to get in and understand anything you see on the map and what's included in each of those, the tech end that we were just taking a look at, right? So go back to format. If you wanted routes, airways, airspace, special use airspace, right? So your MOAs or any restricted spaces, all of these are able to be turned on and to be shown on your screen, right? So I'm going to zoom out and see how some of it shows up. Occasionally, I do run into this where the screen doesn't want to refresh real well, but you can come back and turn as much on or as little as you want going through those. Most of the time, I leave these off when I go through. I might include airports occasionally, but I'm going to leave those features off. So that gives you a high level overview of what's happening on the weather. So I'm going to refresh and see if it gets us back. Good. So a lot to look at. So if you're zooming in, maybe you want that much detail. When you're zooming out, you may not want all of the different METAR points, and you maybe just want to see the fronts and other detail that's on the screen, right? So that you can go back and see what your travel is going to look like. Uh, Doing a little bit closer view and looking what's happening near you, maybe you turn the METARs on or the flight category dots back on, and you can then look to see what's happening across the area. If I go back from observations, we can go to ceilings and visibility. So I changed the date to local time. So now you can see my slider is no longer in Zulu. It's now in Eastern Standard Time so that it's local for me. I can see my general area with the VFR chart behind me. I see any of the details for the storm warning and the IFR AirMet for ceilings below 10,000, visibility below 3 statute miles. And so you can then look to see what's happening there for your visibility. If I want to see what's happening for flight at 7 a.m. in the morning, I come in and look at the forecast, which is showing all of these different areas and showing that, hey, we're supposed to get heavy snow at 8 o'clock in the morning in my area. So not a good day for flying at that time frame. So if I'm going to fly at 4 this afternoon, and let's use that as an example, there's no problems here, but I know there's snow to the north, right? And then there's going to be chances of snow showers off to the side, right? And then I can just go hour by hour to take a look at what's happening as I get into 7 o'clock. So now 7 p.m., there's a slight chance of rain that's going to be showing up in these areas, right? Similarly, I can go from your ceilings and visibility to clouds. So when I'm working with students, if I want to go flying at 4 this afternoon, and it's a little after 2 in the afternoon now, um, then I can come back, let me refresh the screen. Now I can come back and say, hey, if I'm going to leave from one airport to the other, now I know the clouds are going to be 7,000 here, few overcast 13, few at 7,000, broken at 15,000, top 17,000. So it lets me know if I'm doing maneuvers at 3,500, 4,500 feet in the practice area that I use in this general vicinity, then I know an idea of what the clouds are doing at the current time. I can go to 3 o'clock, to 4 o'clock, to 5 o'clock and say, well, the clouds are now getting around 8,000, 7,000, 13,000. So I should still be good for my flight to come down to this area. You can also come in and check precipitation for anything that's expected during that time frame. You can go down to thunderstorms, be good during the summertime. Temperature, don't use temperature as much because it gives you a gradient. If I go to the legend, you can look to see what the temperatures are going to be. So you have to kind of eyeball and say, well, there's a little bit lighter yellow. Here's going to be your temperatures. And it lets you see what's happening there. Where I'm more interested in, as I'm working with students, is the clouds and the winds in most cases. And so for the winds, I can go back and say, oh, at 3 p.m., the winds are calm in this general area. Or a little bit to the east, it's 80, from 80 at 5 knots. I can see that it's 90 at 4 knots. If I get to 5 p.m., I can now see that it's 40 at 3 knots. And you can see the G8 means it's gusting at 8, gusting at 10, gusting at 9. So it gives you a quick little view. 7 a.m. if I'm planning to fly in the morning, the wind's picking up. I can see the winds are now 40 at 6 with gust up to 17. Probably wouldn't fly this with a student pilot studying to get their private. Right? So again, if it doesn't refresh, I'll zoom in or out, and it then lets me refresh the screen and start seeing what's happening. So these winds at gusting 40 at 11, gusting 21, are not good for a private pilot's student that's coming in and trying to get to his private pilot. If you're working on your commercial, you may be on the edge of your personal minimums, but it gives you a good little way to go 18 hours out And then when I'm doing planning with students, I'll come in 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, check to see what the weather's going to be, 7, 8, 9 till noon the next day. And that'll help me make a go, no go decision. Now, understand this is a forecast. Many times I've looked at the forecast, it's been perfectly spot on. Other times I've looked at the forecast at night and it is totally wrong. But it is a forecast, so it's a good tool to use, especially if you're looking at observations coming back in. You can also come back and look at segments. So what's happening on segments around the current time frames, 3 p.m., 4 p.m., 5 p.m., right? I can look at air mets. You can see the current air mets at 4 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Eastern, and then as I get into 10 p.m. tonight, now you can see that they're calling for icing, right? If you click on an area where they're overlapping, you'll get all three. You get IFR, mountain obscuration, sorry, and icing. So it gives you a good planning tool looking ahead. The other that you can come in is look at the center weather advisories, if there aren't any, and then look at prog charts. So prog charts, I'll come back in, and again, you can change your settings of what you want to see. These do change, i.e., for observation, you had a much bigger menu. For prog charts, I get weather, METARs, and fronts, so I can turn the data on and off, so that I can get a view of what's happening, what the current weather is versus not. And then this lets me come back in, and it's at 1 p.m. today. Then it's looking at 7 p.m. today, and then it'll go to 1 a.m. tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. I can see the ISO bars. So this is where you can see they were getting closer together. We saw the winds were picking up a while ago. And then you get 7 p.m. Then it starts going from 7 p.m. on Saturday to 7 a.m. on Sunday. Now 7 p.m. on Sunday. So it's a much wider forecast to give you an idea if you're going to fly in a day or two or three, as to see what's happening from there. Right. If you want to look at TAF maps, so me being south of Charlotte, so I'm going to zoom out so it'll recapture the data. It didn't work, so let me refresh. Here we go. So I can see the TAFs that are around my area. So there's one in Charlotte, Greenville, Spartanburg, Columbia. So you can see Charleston, South Carolina, Augusta, Georgia. Right. This one's down in Orangeburg. This one's at Shaw Air Force Base, Florence, South Carolina. So now I can look at the TAFs on a map for each of these areas, and it gives you a quick overview. Remember, you can't use TAFs greater than the 5 miles that they report on for your planning, but it does give you a high level visual of what's happening there. Now, if you want to dig deeper into the TAFs, I can come in for METARs and for TAFs, and I can put it in the station. So if I put in Charlotte, hit enter and load. So it's going to give me the current METAR for Charlotte, and it's also going to give me the TAF. If I want to decode those, click on decode, and now you can learn this. So this is a great tool when you're learning to read a METAR or learning to read a TAF. Go through here and see, hey, you can see the time, you can see the winds, visibility, cloud layers, scattered 3,600, broken 11,000, broken 25,000, 5 degrees Celsius minus 9 degrees Celsius for your dew point, your barometer at the 30.10 marks what's happening on your sea level, your temperatures. But to decode it and learn it, now you can come back and see the exact same data. Gives you in Celsius and Fahrenheit. Gives you the pressure altimeter. Gives you your winds, your calm, and you can look at each of the levels of what's going to happen at the time frames for your TAF. Right? If I wanted to use an airport to the south of me and wanted to use Lancaster, well, it doesn't have a TAF. It's just going to have a METAR. So it's only going to show the METAR for Lancaster, right? And I can decode, undecode. I can put it in a tabular format to show what's happening if you like that view. So a lot of great information in here to see what's going to happen. You can impact, so it's going to navigate you back to the terminal weather dashboard. You can look at your map. We can go here to the dashboard and see what's happening for Lancaster and come in and look at Charlotte. And you can see dates, time frames, what's going to be happening for each of the different areas of visibility, ceiling, covers, categories, everything's VFR to that time frame, right? And so you can go through each of those different ones. Right? You will look at PIREP data. So I can come in and say, hey, if I want something near Lancaster within 200 miles in the last hour and a half, well, here's a PIREP around Atlanta. Here's one around Columbia, South Carolina, Savannah, Georgia, another Atlanta, one around Wilmington, another one around Columbia. And you can go through each of those, and as before, you can decode what's happening on those. So I had to hit load data to reload it. But now I can look at Columbia's closer to me. So there was an aircraft, an A321 at 34,000 feet and turbulence was negative. If I go down to Savannah, you've got an S50 at 30,000 feet, there was a light chop. Very important to know that's A321 is going to be a much larger Airbus than flying on a Cessna 172 or 177 or a Piper Cherokee. So it gives you a lot of data to come back and look. You can go to the wind, temperature data. So I'm in the southeast, so I can load forecast for 6 hours out. I want to look low level. That's where I usually fly. And now I can look at 3,000, 6,000 feet, 9,000, 12,000 feet for the different areas that I'm going to be in. So if I'm heading south toward Jacksonville, I can see what's happening in Jacksonville or Miami. I can look at what's happening a little bit to the southwest down in Savannah. If I wanted to go to the northwest, excuse me, northeast to Wilmington, I can see what's happening for each of those different levels so that I can make sure that I understand what's happening here. If you're in a different part of the country, just simply choose those and you can look at the different areas. So a lot more to take a look at from the northeast. Out west, obviously you can choose the Pacific coast and see what data is out on the Pacific coast for the different airports. So some really good tools to come back in and take a look at. But at a high level, I wanted to show you how you can change all the options for your different layers, what you can include or not include, right? To give you a better idea as you're doing your planning, how you could change your map, format data, METARs, what's visible, not visible, PIREPs, SIGMEDs, imagery, format, great for using local time, changing the back end if you wanted VFR chart, if you wanted IFR low level chart. So it lets you put all of those in and customize it the way you want to fly. So I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Very quick overview of a lot of the functions. If there's anything particular you want me to dig deeper into, please drop a comment below and let me know. Thanks and have a great day.